Joining me now, great pleasure, really. We welcome West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin. Senator Manchin, how are you, sir? Thank you for coming on the show.
Oh, Larry, thanks for having me. It's been too long. I miss you.
I know. As I recall, you made a couple of appearances on another show on another network. So welcome to Fox Business.
I'm just so happy to be with you. Thank you for having me.
So one of the things, I know you're furious at it. I'm furious at it, too. At this critical juncture with respect to Putin, Russia, Ukraine, and the whole energy story, we are still, the United States, somebody, refineries, gas stations, we're still buying 650,000 barrels of Russian oil on a daily basis. And I just think that's an outrage, and I know you've railed against it, too. Question is, what can we do about it, sir?
Well, Larry, let me just put things in perspective. What we're going through today, and you and I are of a vintage, we remember the Cuban Missile Crisis and how concerned we were with nuclear war could break out and this and that. We now have a land war not seen since basically World War II in Europe. It could escalate into something horrific. We've got to come together as a country and be the leader that the world needs right now in coming together. So I'm working, as you know, I always do, with my Republican friends and my Democrat friends to come together as one, as Americans right now, and show the unity that we have. What we need to do right now is make sure that we are able to lead by showing the rest of the world how much that we support Ukraine, and we will shut off the revenues every way we possibly can that goes in to Putin and to Russia. That product has been coming at an average of over 500,000 barrels a day. It's up to 670,000, you are correct, and that can be stopped. Now, it's not the federal government buying this product. It's basically private enterprise companies that buy it to provide basically energy, a lot of it to the Northeast, a lot of it over on the West Coast, because it has been extremely cheap. But the bottom line is we can produce it. We're down 1 million barrels a day, Larry, our production. We've been up to over 12.3. We're down to 11.2 million barrels a day. So we can pick up that. People says, well, it's going to create higher prices in America. It should not really reflect at all in pricing higher in America because we have that capacity. If not, you know, I oppose the administration on the XL pipeline. I think we should have built that pipeline. I still think we should build that pipeline and have that product coming from Canada, our best and friendliest neighbor that we have. So we have many options to do this, not to put a burden on American taxpayers and American consumers. But this is a time for us to show our unity behind Ukraine, and that's shutting down everything we can. I've said this, Larry, if our bar owners, God bless them all, the bar owners around America are stopped selling and basically serving Russian vodka, can't we at least stop Russian petroleum and Russian oil from coming in?
I love that.
My goodness, let's do it.
Look, sir, I haven't had a drink in 27 years, but I still love the idea that you're saying. I wholeheartedly endorse. You know, Ed, you've mentioned energy independence. I was waiting for Mr. Biden last night to raise energy independence as part of a coming together and unifying message on stopping Putin in Ukraine or stopping Putin in Lithuania or wherever else he's going to go. But no, the message wasn't there. And I think we've got to get back to energy independence, and then these prices will go down instead of up.
Let's look at the most solid statement that I thought that I was so happy to hear the president say, and I'll start there, is first of all to say that we will fight for every inch of NATO property to defend them to all the might that we have. That is a strong message, and I appreciate that. I'm going to give the president and the administration kudos for basically working with all of our allies to bring it together. When you think about finally we got Germany to pay 2%, we've been raising Cain about them not meeting their quota for NATO, and they have. And we've got Switzerland off. So basically they're involved now, and they've never been involved. That's all good. But that basically says that we have to have energy independent. You cannot be the superpower of the world if you have to depend on other nations to produce your energy. And I'm just in a different place than my caucus or the colleagues or the president, and they have a hard time coming to grips that you've got to use everything you've got. You've got to use your gas, you've got to use your coal, you've got to use your oil, and you have to develop wind and solar and hydro and geothermal and hydrogen. All these things I'm for. But I'm not going to leave us in a void, Larry. I'm just not going to basically go down that path and end up like Germany did. trying to get rid of something that you don't think you like because you think something else will replace it. And then when you get to that time period, it doesn't replace it. So you're in one heck of a mess.
You know, you used the phrase, all the above. And that was a phrase a lot of us used in both political parties.
Right.
But it seems nowadays, under the current administration, they want either or. They want no fossil fuel development whatsoever, and they want to put all the subsidies into you know, solar panels and wind turbines. It doesn't have to be either or, does it?
Not at all, Larry. And tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock in my Energy Committee, and myself and John Barrasso, my ranking member, we're going to have a hearing. We're bringing all the FERC regulators in, 5 of them, because they have really overreached as far as I'm concerning, basically making it almost extremely difficult, if not impossible, for us to have any type of natural gas delivery pipelines that deliver it. I can't get a major pipeline out of the West Virginia, Marcellus and Utica Shale, which is one of the richest basically shale reserves in the world. And it basically would help so much. We could have backfilled Texas when they went down. We could basically help with our LNG transports that are going to be needed for us to support our allies. All of these things should be done, but you've got to get the product to the market. They don't want to get the product to the market because they don't like the product. That's not who we are as Americans. You can't do that, Larry.
You know, Kevin McCarthy was right. He mentioned Secretary Granholm, Department of Energy, is sitting on 6 applications for LNG export projects, and she refuses to rule on them. And I would say, sir, this is a moment when we would want to put up as much LNG export capability and power as we could, particularly now with Germany changing. Germany's coming around to our point of view, or what was our point of view. They're not going to be mean and nasty about only renewables. Now's the time to put these LNG export projects on the table. She's keeping them off the table.
Well, there's more than just Germany. If Germany does decide to go down just renewables only and counting on wind from the North Sea, whatever they're counting on, still yet there's an awful lot of our allies in NATO that depend on the LNG and not having to buy it from Russia or be held hostage. There's no mistake about it, Larry, that Russia has weaponized energy. They have weaponized it, and they will continue to use it. They will not just stop with Ukraine. They'll use it wherever it's advantageous. And we have got to show the rest of the world that the superpower of the world, the United States of America, has the ability and has the resolve to make sure that we backfill and leave nobody short, none of our allies, any way, shape, or form.
Senator Manchin, let me switch gears a bit and turn to the speech last night regarding domestic policies and spending. He didn't mention the phrase Build Back Better, but I heard a lot of the same progressive wish list right through all the various points that you've had a problem with, we've had a problem with it. And again, you know, I don't think the country wants that kind of spending. You rang the bell on inflation last summer, last spring. You were completely right the entire time. Overspending causes inflation, deficit spending causes inflation, but you also rang a warning about the need for workfare and about the need for means testing these programs. It's not as though we're against the social safety net, but there have to be some limits, do there not? What was your reaction to Mr. Biden's coming back with essentially the same program that was knocked down last year?
Well, I was asked afterwards, you know, what I thought, and I tried to take some notes down, make sure I was on track on that. I said this: the president's speech last night was not the speech he would have given if Russia had not invaded Ukraine. So that changes. The world's changed in a very short period of time. We have to change also. And I also said that basically when I said inflation is going to be a problem, we cannot basically spend the kind of money we're going to put into circulation, another $3 trillion or whatever. Trust me, there's an awful lot of money that want to be put in. We'd already put $5.4 trillion in, Larry. And inflation, we were warned about inflation. It wasn't just me. I was the one that spoke out on it early, but everyone heard the same thing I heard. Nobody wanted to believe it. That we had pent-up demand. We had a vaccine that was working. We had pent-up demand, and basically, it was going to be unleashed. All this money was going to be unleashed onto the market. And we knew that we did not have the labor supply to meet the demand for the products that people were going to want. And that caused the inflation that we have, okay? Now, they were telling me there's 14 laureates that said, oh, this will never happen. Well, I'm sorry, they were wrong, okay? But with that, I said, before we go down this path, don't you think we ought to be concerned about how we're going to handle inflation? Because that is the biggest detriment we have to society today. In my state of West Virginia and all over this country, Larry, 7.5% inflation is hurting everybody, and it hurts the working and the lower end of the socioeconomic ladder more so than anybody else. So let's make sure. And they said, what do you want to hear in the speech? When I went in to the address last night, I said, inflation, 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 energy, energy, energy. And I still feel the same. I didn't hear what I wanted to hear, but basically, I have my ability to make my voice heard, and the president, and I'm sure his entourage will talk to me. We have a great relationship with everybody. We can agree to disagree. Now, what I have said, if we believe as Democrats that the tax code should be adjusted, then work on a competitive tax code. That's what you should be doing in reconciliation. And then basically we all agree that we should do something about high pharmaceutical prices that we pay in the United States more than anywhere else. And if you want to do something with an all-in energy policy that does not leave us in a void, then do something that basically uses all of the above and with a new technology, but basically not leave your fossils out of the mix, because that's the horsepower you need to run the superpower of the world. But all the social agenda that they're wanting to work on, that should be done in a regular order. That's major social changes to our society. And I have said this very clearly, Larry. I've come from an era when I remember John Kennedy giving his speech in 1960 saying, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. And I believe these societal changes, if there's not adjustments made, we would have a country and a society that would say, how much more can my country do for me? That's not the democracy, and it's not the freedoms that we grew up with, and it's not who we are as Americans.
Well, as a longtime follower and supporter of JFK myself, I wrote a book on the subject. I couldn't agree with you more, sir. I mean, let me ask you, look, he's got a laundry list of social spending items. It's not much different from what the CBO scored without gimmicks at $5 trillion, and it was not paid for, and it would create $3 trillion in new debt. I mean, do you expect to continue to oppose that if the administration insists on driving it through?
I haven't changed, Larry. I can't change. I mean, you know, I come from a town of Farmington, West Virginia, a little coal mining town. We had 400 or 500 people. And I never remember you could spend yourself out of debt. I never learned that economic trick in Farmington. And I wasn't raised that way. And basically, this is time we're going to have to batten down. We got $30 trillion of public debt. It continues to grow. When I come into the Senate in November of 2010, Larry, I think we were around $13 trillion of debt. It's more than doubled since then. And what we're doing to our children, we're writing checks they can't cash. We're putting them in a hell of a bind. I'm sorry, but we really are. And we've got to change that, Larry. And that trajectory has got to go down. Also, we've got to fight inflation. So whatever changes we make, that we have some money that we can dedicate, there should be a tremendous amount that goes to those two things, inflation and debt, and then be able to pick the priorities of what we really think is needed, the highest of priorities. And in climate, we have a responsibility to our climate. I haven't met a Democrat or Republican that wants to drink dirty water or breathe dirty air. I haven't met one yet. So they all want a better climate. But we want a balance between the environment and the climate. We think there's a balance to be had. And we're going to use everything the good Lord gave us in the cleanest fashion. The energy we produce in America, Larry, is the cleanest in the world.
Yes, sir.
So whatever we replace somebody, if we replace Russia, I guarantee you, what we send them in LNG to help our allies will be the cleanest they've received, and it'll help the climate more than what they're receiving from Russia.
It's just so true. It's just so true empirically and scientifically. Not only is it cleaner, sir, it's cheaper. It's actually a whole lot cheaper. If they just let us, if the government authorities let us produce it, pipeline it, and then ultimately sell it to Europe, we can take them off the hook. Senator Manchin, can I just ask you one other thing? Because I thought you made a fantastic contribution last year on this. The idea of workfare, work requirements.
Oh, my.
This goes back to the Bill Clinton compromise with Gingrich and Republicans 25 years ago, which, first of all, was one of the best compromises probably in history, but second of all, was very productive. It worked. People realized opportunities. You insisted on this last year. I myself echoed you and supported that every step of the way, as did a lot of my pals. I mean, I think Workfare, you know, we should pause spending, and we've got to stop this deficit spending that's inflationary. But welfare without Workfare, I don't know, Senator Manchin, it doesn't sound like an opportunity agenda to me.
I was very supportive of Bill Clinton when he said basically welfare to work. When I was governor, I did the same. I wanted to be, I basically said Mike Levitt, a friend of mine who was a governor, former governor of Utah, he was head of DHHS. I says, Mike, I need a waiver. He said, what for? And I says, Mike, the way the code's written right now, I have to basically support a healthy person who had hard economic times, a healthy poor person, the way that I have a moral responsibility to help a very person who is in need, that has either physical or mental incapacities, that I need to help them. I don't have enough money to do everything for both. I've got to have people producing. So I've always been that you've got to produce and give something back. And that's what I have said. I said, so if you're coming to me with programs that doesn't have a work requirement, or it's not means tested, where it's targeted to help the most in need that are trying to help themselves, then I'm not going to be interested. I said, I'm ready to work with you any way possible that helps lift people up. But a helping hand is a helping hand, you know, and it's not basically a handout. And that's what people in West Virginia want. People don't understand that. People want, when they hit hard times, they need a helping hand. Everybody does from time to time. And we have a lot of social programs that do that. But basically, if you're going to give a handout continuously, it'll continue. Right now, we have still 9 or 10 million jobs we're not filling in America. There's a lot of work for a lot of people. The pay has gone up because of the demand for labor. That's great. Labor's able to get good pay now, and I'm tickled to death for that. But with that, we need more people in the workforce. And we need a good immigration policy that works for America. And we need to secure our borders. You can't have an immigration policy without secured borders, Larry. And you can't have a workforce that's not here that can basically enjoy the fruits of America and the fruits of their labor.
Amen, Senator Manchin. It's wonderful to see you, sir. And thank you for your service. Really appreciate it.
Well, let's get together soon, Larry.
Yes,
I do. I enjoy talking to you.
I'll come visit down there. Thank you.
Okay, I know you will.
All right.
Okay.